was about to start working on a cover letter for this job opportunity, and I know, don't mean to jump scare you guys like that, but I was about to work on it, and I come over to the site to just get some details, and the job position has closed. So that's cool, I guess. I've only applied for about 9 jobs so far, which I know is not the most. These days, especially, you're supposed to be sending hundreds of job applications out for a chance at an interview for hopefully one of them, just for them to eventually decline you anyway. But it's so far, I've only been able to apply for about 9 because the rest are out of state, which I'm not willing to move or travel, and the other ones have ridiculous job requirements. I've never had a career job so far, and they're wanting at least 2 years of experience. How am I supposed to get that job experience if I can't get a job? Of the 9 applications I've sent out so far, I've only heard back from one, which was telling me, nah, we're good. But hey, we'll keep your resume on file just in case. They're not going to do anything with it. I already know they are not. And then the rest of the emails I get are pretty much just trash. Employers are looking for virtual sales representatives and customer service workers. I mean, no thanks, man. You can do all that for $30K a year. Yep, that's exactly why I went to college, don't you know? Spent, I don't know, 10 to 20K on college just to get a $30K a year job. Yep, sounds good to me. No thanks, man. I'll pass. Anyway, alrighty, so Marathon came out recently, or not exactly it came out, it had its server slam, which is still going on. I think it goes to March 2nd. Let me look at that really quickly, actually. Okay, yeah, the server slam goes to March 2nd, and I played it a little bit yesterday. You guys saw it in the video, if you decided to watch that video, that is. And I only played an hour of it, but an hour is really all you need for a first impression. I'm not really doing a review in this video. I'm just going over some of my thoughts near the end of this video, and also just the community reaction to the game. There's been a lot of kind of like split opinions on the game, and really it's where I kind of expected the community to sit at with this game. There's a lot of people that like the game or love the game, and there's a lot of people that hate the game. Not too many that are in the middle. There are a rare few like me where we just think the game is alright, but it doesn't really hook us. You know, we know that's not for us, and we're alright with that. You know, extraction shooters are not my genre. I did not expect this game to make me a fan of extraction shooters. It didn't, and that's okay. I got no issues with that at all. Gave the game a shot. It's not for me. No issues. And really, I'll go over a little bit more of the community outburst towards each other again in my thoughts section, which I'll timestamp out in the video. But I've been looking around at some of the comments on other people's marathon videos, and I even took a quick glimpse at Reddit, which was definitely a mistake, so did not last very long on there, I'll tell you that much. But even though I've only played for an hour, I do have some thoughts on it, and I can at least speak on some of this stuff, but most of the notes that I took are from opinions of others. And really, this is just feedback to the game for what can be improved. This is not hate, this is just criticism. It's feedback, right? Hey, even if you're a glazer of the game, it's okay to admit that not everything is perfect. There is stuff that can be improved, and the developers ideally want to hear about what can be improved, because they want to make the best game they possibly can. Now, this is all out of order, so we're just going off the rip. So the first note that I got was that the inventory gets a little messy, and what I kind of mean with this is it's a little weird to try to manage. It's a bit confusing to look at as well. Bunch of the icons kind of blend together, so you have a hard time discerning what is what. Part of this is definitely because it's the learning curve. You gotta kind of learn what is what exactly. Over time, people will get better at being able to quickly tell at a glance what's what, but even then, there is still some overlap between some items where really you kind of need to look at more of the text to see what it is exactly. And I think it would be nice if Bungie could improve on these icons to be able to discern a little bit better at a quick glance as to what's what. Another thing about the inventory that's probably just to my opinion is whenever you start to loot something or someone, it takes a moment for everything to be shown. And so really this kind of leads to you just standing there for a good minute or two, just discerning all the loot and deciding what to keep and what to throw out. I'm wondering how the game would be if they decided to just instantly show all the loot instead of it having to be revealed one after the other, because really there's a lot of downtime in this game. And the TTK is pretty fast, which I'll get into here in a moment. But really, you can just be in your inventory for a long time, and with the TTK, you could get shot at and not even have a chance to fight back. And I do think inventory management is not exactly the most fun part of the game. Some people probably find it fun, some people don't. But anyway, I'm just curious how that would be if the loot was revealed instantly instead of having to wait on it. And also, again, icons, they should probably be updated some to be able to discern a little bit better. Next is the UI. The UI for the game is a bit confusing as well. I mean, someone said it's the menu game, and yeah, that definitely rings true. When I was in the main menu of the game, it was kind of hard to just figure out what's what and where stuff is. Now, some people push back on this saying, oh yeah, you just need to get used to it, bro. Just adjust. Oh, you're just a whiny 3-year-old crybaby and whatnot. And look, man, the menu, it could be improved, and people complaining about the menu is not exactly a bad thing, or people lacking attention span and stuff like that, okay? It's not exactly a person's fault if the menu is confusing to them. It happens, and it's something that can be improved on. Really, there are a lot of menus within menus, and really Destiny, I mean, kind of suffers from the same issue. The menu over on Destiny to a Destiny player does not really seem all that problematic because it's just been ingrained in our brains for years. People just memorize where everything is. But even still, there is some times on Destiny where I have confusion with the menus, and I think Marathon is probably going to suffer a similar fate if the menus are not improved on. And yeah, it maybe is like a little bit of a nitpick. It doesn't determine whether the game is fun or not, right? But it still is a genuine criticism. It's good feedback to hear, so it should be worked on. Next thing that I've heard is AI is hard. This is definitely subjective as to whether you like this or not, but maybe in some of the other maps they could have more chill AI for those that like it. Maybe they just want an easier map where the AI is not so difficult and they can focus a little bit more on the PvP action. Maybe some other maps have even more difficult AI. There's a lot of experimenting around that can be done with that. I think that you can get a good mix of both. Some maps have harder AI and some maps have easier AI. There's nothing wrong with experimenting around with that. The next piece of feedback that I heard is that there's not much PvP. Now, Bungie did recently do a tweak to this, so we'll have to see how that actually turns out. Apparently some of the feedback, or not the feedback, what Bungie's response to some of this was is that players are just dying early to the AI. Maybe that is the case, maybe not. I mean, I doubt Bungie would lie on that case, but it is just a complaint I've heard that there's not too much PvP going on. Some people will like that, some people won't. I'll get into that a little bit later. Next point that I've heard is longevity. Some people are just wondering what the longevity of the game actually is. Like, what about when you start to get your loot maxed out? What about when you get all the factions maxed out? What are you kind of really going for then at that point? And some will say longevity is not that important, but hey, this is a live service game. Longevity is like the whole point of a live service game. If a live service game does amazing in its first month, but then it falls off afterwards and no one's playing it, is it really a successful live service game? I mean, New World, just to throw out an example, New World was popping off in like its first few months or so, and then it fell off a cliff eventually, and where is it now? It's getting shut down. So there's that to think about. And then of course with longevity comes the end game, kind of similar points. This is just kind of an uncertain area. Sorry, I trip over my words a bit. I'm still working on this whole talking thing. But end game is kind of a genuine question because, again, after you get all your loot and after you upgrade all your factions, kind of what are you really playing for then? We'll have to see with the full game release. We're not really going to get the taste of it during the server slam. So the next point that I heard about was that Assassin Invis is pretty annoying. Now I was curious how the whole runner abilities were all going to play out. Seems like most of them are not much of an issue, but the Assassin Invis, with a game like this, extraction shooter, loot is precious, you only got one life, it's understandable for something like Invis to be super annoying because there's not exactly too much of a counter for it, and no one likes to be killed in a cheap method, and Invis is typically cheap. I mean, hey, Destiny 2, again, with hunters and their pesky Invis, am I right? It's annoying to deal with, and that's in a more respawn enabled game mode over on Destiny, whereas Marathon, it's an extraction shooter. Invis is going to be super annoying, so I don't really know what can be dealt with that. Maybe Bungie could balance it somehow. Maybe they can make make it a little bit easier to see. So maybe it's like easier to see up close, but still hard to see at a distance. Just some food for thought. And then next point I have for myself is actually runner's abilities. I was really curious how these were going to work out, but they seem to actually be working fine. I thought that most of them could lead to some cheap moments. No one likes to be killed in a cheap way on an extraction shooter, of all things especially. But turns out most of them seem to actually work and flow pretty well. And it's not really a case of the rich get richer, because everyone has access to them. As someone that has just started a run and almost has no loot, it can actually somewhat give you an advantage if you can use it in a skillful way. If you can use it at the right moment and the right time, they can really actually come in clutch. So it can really actually help out players that are just starting a run with no loot. And then there's also factions. Again, this is a point that I added. Factions, they seem overall pretty good. Obviously, there's a lot of people running the same faction right now, because I don't think all of them are unlocked, which will change when the full game actually releases. I was kind of curious how factions would actually play out to the game, allowing players with no loot, or if they just lost everything, to be able to buy some of it back. Turns out works pretty well. I think it does actually help a little bit for the casual audience, because hey, if you lose your stuff, it's not exactly the end of the world. You can buy it back if need be. You're not exactly going to be able to buy all your loot back, especially if it's really rare, although some of the factions actually do have access to rare loot, and I think it works out pretty well. It helps relieve some of the pain for when you actually do lose your loot. Next point I have, this is one that I heard: shotguns are crazy. And again, an extraction shooter, if you get to something that can kill really fast, that might be a bit problematic. So shotgun snipers, I've not really heard too much on snipers actually, but I've heard that shotguns with like the smoke grenades, they can really be a menace. And then the next point I heard that I kind of felt myself when I was playing is that loot is pretty scarce. Now, I'm more so talking about when it comes to health, shields, ammo. In my first run, I actually ran out of health and shields and ammo, and even looting around some, I kind of struggled to try to find more. I can understand rare loot being scarce, but maybe resources should be a little bit more common. Again, there's a balance, because it's casual versus hardcore, right? Hardcore players might enjoy the more rare loot. Casual players are going to enjoy the bit more frequent loot. I think there is kind of like a good middle ground that can be met with this. I think that giving more health and shields and ammo is not exactly a problem for casuals or hardcore players. I think it kind of just helps everyone, because even a hardcore player would not want to run out of resources. Yeah, you could say that maybe a hardcore player, they'll be able to value their resources more. They'll be able to manage it a bit better, but again, it's just a thought, just a suggestion. Another thing that I kind of mentioned earlier is the TTK is pretty fast. Now, this is not a problem for like arcade shooters, but for an extraction shooter, it can be a bit problematic. I mentioned getting downed while trying to loot earlier on, especially with all the loot having to be revealed over time. You can just be taken out while looting with no chance to fight back. Now, on the benefits, it can allow for 1v3 moments, because basically the faster the TTK gets, the easier it is to just solo a squad, which there is some skill to that for sure. When you get into longer TTKs, that's when you start to get into more squad versus squad combat. It benefits more so teams, while faster TTKs tend to benefit solos more than anything. So again, this is another pretty subjective point. A lot of these points are pretty subjective, except for the menus and UIs getting a little bit confusing. That can be a little bit more objective. But TTK, I'm curious, maybe they could release a mode that's a little bit longer TTK as kind of like an experimental playlist, which I think is something Bungie should do a lot with Marathon. I think they should implement a bunch of experimental playlists for people to test out changes. Kind of like how in Destiny 2, there's the Crucible Labs, which are experimental game modes and modifiers. Although Bungie really does not use the Crucible Labs too much in Destiny 2, I think they should try out experimental modes in Marathon and gather feedback based off of them. Next point, which is pretty common with Bungie games, aim assist is pretty strong. Again, this is not really a pro and not really a con. On one hand, strong aim assist can kind of feel a little bit hand-holdy. It can kind of reduce the skill gap. On the other hand, it can feel pretty nice. People like it when their shots hit the target, even if it is being assisted. Now, this is not really exclusive to controller, because on mouse and keyboard, aim assist more so refers to the bullet magnetism, so essentially bigger hitboxes. That's what you can kind of think of for bullet magnetism. But anyway, it's just a point that I thought of and that I've heard on, and it's pretty common with Bungie games. So again, not really a pro, not really a con. It's very subjective. Next point that I heard on was heat accumulation and some stamina issues. In today's day and age, with a lot of first-person shooters, we have infinite sprint. And even in like third-person shooters, like really infinite sprint is kind of just a common thing for games. It's not until you get to games like Elden Ring, Dark Souls, you know, those Souls-like games where they have a stamina bar. But even then, you can kind of get past the stamina bar in those games by upgrading it or whatever. And I assume you can do so the same in Marathon with like mods and upgrades. That being said, it does not really feel good still, and it might be worth taking a look at. Next point that I heard is that controller is a bit rough when it comes to managing your inventory, which even though I have not experienced, I could definitely imagine that being the case, because having a mouse cursor to just be able to quickly drag stuff over and drag stuff away, controller is definitely going to have issues with that. You're like having to use the D-pad, scroll around with that. You can still probably do so at a decent pace, but having a mouse is so much easier and just more comfortable when it comes to managing inventory. Next 2 points are ones that I came up with. First is a solo only mode where there just are no groups. Again, this is just a consideration. If Bungie doesn't want to do that, there's no problem with that, but I think it's worth thinking about at least. Even if you're against the idea, just understand really there are a lot of solo players when it comes to games. And it's not just because like, oh, people don't have friends. It's because some people just genuinely enjoy playing solo. And even people that have friends to play the game with, they're not all the time going to be playing with their friends. They will have some solo moments. And so I think it's just worth taking a look at. Again, maybe an experimental playlist, which I think is like a good point for all these points that are being made. Everything should just be experimental. There shouldn't be a, okay, it's set in stone, this is this. I think it's worth testing around. The next is a PvE only mode. That's a second point that I made. That's again all by me. Personally, if there was a PvE only mode, I would probably be more interested in Marathon and actually be playing it. Yeah, I know some people will say, oh, that splits up the community. Splitting up the community is not a problem if there's a large community. If you have 1 million players in total, getting 500,000 in one playlist and 500,000 in another playlist is not really an issue. It only really becomes a problem when the community gets small. I think a PvE only mode is worth taking a look at. I don't know if Arc Raiders does it. I know that Tarkov has done it. Now, one was with a mod. I remember that. And then Tarkov decided to do an official mode, and what, I think it was like $200 or something crazy like that. Again, it's just worth maybe taking a consideration. I think you would get a larger community overall if you do a PvE only mode, even if it's like very hardcore PvE. Like a lot of people just want to have a more chill, relaxing time with not having to deal with other players. Oh, speaking of which, for the solo only mode, another reason why I like to play solo is because I'm not always wanting to deal with my teammates. Not that like they get annoying. There obviously are some teammates that get annoying. It happens. It sucks when it does. But besides that, I also just kind of get like, maybe I care a little bit too much about the fun of my teammates, where I'm not really wanting to be a leader. Instead, I'm wanting to follow them and just do whatever they have fun with. If they want to get into action and have fun that way, cool. If they want to stay back some or just try to survive, not really engage other players, cool. I'll do that with them. So really, I just want to do whatever my teammates want to do. And sometimes when there's no communication, there are a bunch of quiet gamers out there these days. Hey, I'm one of them. I admit it. Yes, I'm part of the problem. I don't speak in my games. But sometimes I feel like there's just pressure on me to make sure that my teammates are having fun, because I don't want to like drag anyone down. Again, that's maybe just a me problem. Let me know if you feel the same way, where you're like maybe caring a bit too much about the fun of your teammates. Because really, with like any sort of battle royale game that I've ever played, I always want to just do whatever my teammates want to do, because I want to make sure that they try to have a good time. If Astercross is watching this, I know that he's already going to be like, nah, through my teammates, it's all about me. That's the anti-Cross coming out for sure. Cross, we need a bit more Holy Cross in these times, okay? Especially for Destiny, it's desperate over there. Cross really is like a funny guy. You know how there's like sometimes comments for certain YouTubers where they get called both a hater and a shill, where it's like, how can you really be both? I feel like Cross actually plays both. I feel like Cross tends to be a hater and a shill. You just never know with the guy. One day he's feeling like hating, and the other day he's feeling like glazing. You never know. He's a very unpredictable lad, that is for sure. Although one thing is for certain, RuneScape will always be mentioned. Anyway, next point is that vault space is a bit limited. Maybe some people have issues with this, maybe some people don't have issues with this. Just, again, another thing to maybe consider, maybe up it a little bit more. I know that you can upgrade it. We'll have to see what the actual max space for the vault is. And then last point that I've got is paid versus free. The game is $40. Not everyone's wanting to pitch over $40. Yeah, I know some people say, oh, you just gotta get used to paying for games again, man. Y'all just want everything to be free, huh? And stuff like that. People do not mind spending $40 for a game when it is good. Hey, Arc Raiders, it was $40. Plenty of people bought it because it's fun, because it's good. When it comes to Marathon, obviously, people that enjoy the game will buy it. If you don't like it, don't buy it. That's simple. However, even in today's eras, there are a lot of games that are paid for and still have microtransactions. So regardless of whether Marathon is paid for or free, you can already bet that it's going to have a lot of microtransactions. So really, I think that Marathon should just be free if they're going to do microtransactions. I've got no problem with paying for a game if it's a good game and if there's like no microtransactions with it. When they start to add microtransactions when it's paid for, that's when we start to get problems, because at that point you're like double dipping. Helldivers 2, it's paid for, but all of its microtransactions you can get for free. So if the same is not for Marathon, why shouldn't it just be free? You can try to say, oh, the $40 prevents cheaters. Maybe like the broke cheaters, but a lot of cheaters make money off of cheating because they'll do like paid carries and whatnot. $40 is not going to prevent them from cheating. What's going to prevent them from cheating is how the game's anti-cheat is. Now, so far, have not really heard about any cheaters on Marathon. Who knows how long that will last. I guess also another point is that I have not really seen any problems when it comes to the game performance-wise. Like there has not really been any crashing, so I mean that's good. Seems like things have been pretty stable. Obviously there are some bugs here and there. Part of me wants to say, oh yeah, it's just because it's a server slam test, there's going to be bugs. But at the same time, a lot of games tend to even release with a bunch of bugs. Who knows what all will be changed between now and the release of the game, right? We'll just have to see how things go. So now that I got all my points done over some of the community feedback that I've heard for the game, just diving into my thoughts on the game, I think it's alright. I only played for an hour, but I did not really have a bad time playing for that hour. It still is an extraction game. There's a lot of downtime in it, and that's just not too exciting for me. I don't like to spend minutes at a time just not really doing anything and instead just looting. Looting does not really feel like gameplay for me in an extraction shooter like this. Obviously looting for, I don't know, like an RPG game or something like that, it's fine to me. I understand that's part of the game, and I understand that's part of extraction shooters as well. But I'm more so looking to actually play the game, like actually fight stuff. And there's just a lot of downtime in extraction shooters for the most part. It seems like especially for Marathon, there's just more downtime than others. Maybe I'm wrong on that, you can correct me if so. And also I just don't like the pressure of knowing that there could potentially be another player watching me and about to down me without me having any chance to fight them. And I also just do not really like the idea of losing my stuff. So extraction shooters, they're just not for me. I recognize that. Got no issue with that. Marathon does not appeal to me, and that is alright. I am not complaining about it at all. So really, I think that if you already did not like extraction shooters, Marathon probably is not going to sway you. Obviously, there still can be some people that get swayed. I think a problem is that Marathon is kind of just less casual player friendly. And while yes, I know hardcores versus casuals, it's a debate of the century, happens all the time. But casual players tend to make up a majority of a player base. So it is kind of important to appeal to them, which I think is why Arc Raiders exploded so much. It's a lot more casual friendly for an extraction shooter especially. Tarkov probably just got so big because it appeals to a very niche audience, but there is a pretty large audience for that niche. I feel like it appeals to milsim type of players, more realistic type of players, very hardcore ones. Sounds funny, but it feels like it appeals to a lot of army nerds and a bunch of gun tubers. That's by no means supposed to sound like an insult to them, by the way. I like guns as well. America, heck yeah. But it feels like Tarkov appeals to an audience of gamers that do not usually play games, if that makes sense. But anyway, back to Marathon. Community's been really split on it and really just going at each other's necks over it. We really can't have, like, I don't know, more civil or more formal debates these days. They've always got to be extreme in either direction. It can't just be like, oh, I'm not a fan of the game and that's alright, or I don't like the game and that's alright. You know, it's just not for me. And there can't really be any, oh, I like the game and, you know, hope others like it. And if you don't like it, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Instead, it's like, oh, you don't like the game? It must be because you're brain rotted and you've got the attention span of a 3-year-old. You're just a whiny crybaby that can't be happy in life at all. all. Everything's about you, huh? Probably grew up sucking off the wealth of your parents, huh? Leeching off of their success. Or, oh, you like the game? Yeah, probably never experienced a good game in your life, huh? Must have absolutely no good taste. You probably enjoy eating food out of the trash can with the type of taste you're talking about. Like, people really cannot just be nice to each other, I guess, regardless of their opinions. I do think that people maybe kind of hate on Marathon a little bit too hard. Some people act like it's killed their firstborn, it increased their taxes, but at the same time, on the other end, I have heard people calling the game a comeback when the game was not even out yet. It didn't even have its server slam yet. Like, can we relax a little bit? Like, if we can't hate on the game before it's launched, can we not, like, laze the game before it launches? You know, can we at least wait a little bit for it to launch to where we can all evaluate it and get a good opinion on it and get a good idea for it? I do feel like there is probably like a lot of people that just kind of weirdly prey on a game's downfall. My thought is, even if I don't enjoy a game, I still hope that the people that are excited for the game do enjoy it. You know, I don't exactly wish for anyone to suffer. That's not fun at all. Although part of my worry is kind of when people are hyped for a game, they're enjoying a game, but the game is not really doing too well to the majority of players. I do tend to worry about shutdowns, especially in this day and age, because really, we're not in a era of comebacks. We're not really getting those No Man's Sky moments anymore, because really it's either the game launches and does very well, or it doesn't launch very well at all and it does very poorly and the game just gets shut down, which definitely sucks, because I really think that pretty much every game should get a second chance. But at the same time, no one really wants to wait a year for a game to get good, and there's some times where a game gets continued support after a failure and it just does not really go anywhere. Like, for example, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I think it got supported for like a good year after launch and it just did not come back at all. It was more so like a continued waste of resources. But even if games do not get their comeback, I still think that they should at least stay online. I think it's kind of stupid to shut them down. Hopefully that Stop Killing Games movement gets somewhere. Now, Marathon, even if it doesn't do well, I don't think it will shut down, because even Destiny 1 is still available to play today. But I don't know either, because, you know, Bungie is owned by Sony now. They just shut down Blue Point Studios. So we'll just have to really see how things go. I think my biggest question is, what numbers does Marathon have to pull for Bungie and Sony to consider it a success? Another thing about live service games is you can't really call the launch a success, even if the initial numbers are very good, because live service games are about longevity. Having 1 month of greatness and then the rest are just bottom of the barrel, that's not really a success. So we'll just have to see how things go. Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Just try to, you know, be nice to each other regardless of whether you like the game or do not. Anyway, I think that's all I've got for now, so see you guys in the next video.